Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Resource Basket webinar, Understanding Youth with FASD, or Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders. My name is Anna McGovern, representing the Resource Basket, a training and technical assistance center for people who work with or support rural Alaska Native youth. Before we get started, I want to review a couple things that may be helpful for our time together this hour. On the screen, you can see information to access the teleconference for today's audio if you are unable to use your computer speakers. Everyone who is calling in will be placed in listen-only mode. Closed captioning will also be available during the training. Our presenters today, rewind. So I am your host for today. I am the Wellness Education Coordinator at Rural Cap. I work with the ATCA Teen Ambassadors as well as the Growing Up Tobacco-Free in Alaska projects to ensure that Alaska's children remain tobacco-free. Our presenters today are Jean Gerhardt-Cyrus of Kobuk Valley Consulting and Alex Fogarty and Amy Westfall of Stone Soup Group. Our presenters bring a wealth of knowledge and experience on today's topic, and we are excited to have them here with us. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available on the Resource Basket website. All of our previous online trainings are archived at www.resourcebasket.org. Points of view or opinions expressed in this webinar are those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention or the U.S. Department of Justice. At the end of this presentation, you will be asked to fill out a brief online survey. Okay, so let's get some practice in with our platform here today. So you can interact with each other and with the presenters in a couple of different ways. One way to let us know if we're not loud enough or talking too fast is use the figure up on top. It's a little person with their hand raised, so you can go ahead and click that and let us know if we were talking too quietly or a little too fast. Now let's take a look at the webinar screen. At the bottom right-hand side there is the chat box. We will monitor the chat box throughout the presentation. Above the chat box, you will see a Q&A box. Use this box for any questions that you would like the presenters to answer at the end of the presentation. If you are joining us online and are viewing as a group at a computer, go ahead and type in the chat box how many of you there are and where you're from. If you're watching by yourself, write a quick hello and where you're from. That way we can get to know everybody. A couple people from Anchorage. Barrow. Awesome.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Angela. I'm from Sitka.
Awesome. Hi, Angela. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. So go ahead and keep typing in where you're from and who you're viewing.
I even remembered to unmute my microphone. Well, I want to say welcome to everyone and thank you to Rural Cap for sponsoring this very important presentation and for inviting me to participate. I do have a broad background in this as a parent, as a former special and regular ed teacher, and I also serve on the Gov's Council, and so through that I chair a work group on FASD, and most recently I have been mentoring the youth group that my daughter started in 2014, and that has given me, I think, a lot of background that I can relate to the kinds of issues that you may be dealing with. I really want to encourage you, if you have a question, to please post it so that I'll try to look at it. But I would like to answer as many questions as possible, and while I'm going along, and if not, I think we have some time at the end as well. So to start with, what is FASD? And I call this the elevator speech because it's pretty condensed. I'm not going to read everything that's on here. I put that on there so that you can come back to it and read it later. But one of the big things I wanted to review is the term Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders with an S. And that is because alcohol can affect any number of systems of the body, and it can impact everybody. Is somebody saying something? Okay. Can impact everyone different. There are many, many disorders that are caused by alcohol, and so FASD is not in itself a diagnosis. The diagnoses have to do with the impact of prenatal exposure, and that is why it is called spectrum disorders, because of the wide range of impacts. There is no safe time during pregnancy for people to consume alcohol. Unfortunately, many people do not plan pregnancies, and therefore their babies are exposed before they know it, and the best thing they can do in that situation is get help if they need it or stop drinking. Alcohol affects the brain. It can affect anything in the body that is developing, and the effects are impacted three ways. So the timing, so whatever is developing at the time alcohol is consumed, can be impacted. The amount of alcohol being consumed makes a difference, and for a teratogen it must be dose specific. And also the individual biology of the mother and the baby, and they even have been identical twin studies where they will be impacted differently. So it really does, it's very variable. There's no, this is what fetal alcohol looks like, and often you don't see it anyway. There are a lot of interesting studies lately about the impact of the father's use of alcohol on the baby, on the developing baby, prior to, or at conception, of course, prior to the baby developing, not during development, because it's already been done. And is there a way I can see behind the closed captioning pod? Ah, thank you. Okay, that works. All right. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. And oh. There we go. Okay, and I apologize because I'm not able to switch to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So how does alcohol work? Well, it kills brain cells. It can also kill other cells. And in studies that are done, you can actually see holes where brain matter is not developed because of the impact of alcohol. It also can cause brain cells to transfer to or be directed to the wrong part of the brain. When I do a in-person trainings, we do an activity where we pass around, I call it a thought, so it might be a brain squeezy toy or something, and we pass it around and pass it to the person next to us, and then we all move around and pass it to the same person. And what that illustrates is how much slower processing occurs once the brain matter, which is made up of the people, is not where it's supposed to be. It takes a lot longer to process information if you don't have a nice, neat file system in your brain, or after driving around in Fairbanks, I can say, or if there are detours and you have to reroute, sometimes you have to go a long way around to get to where you're going. And that processing, not only does it take longer for youth who are impacted by alcohol, but it's also much more tiring. It's more tiring and it's more stressful because they have to work harder than somebody whose brain is not impacted. It's not that they're not smart. It's not that they can't do it. But the effort that they need to do it is much greater than somebody's brain who's not impacted. So we tend to think of the brain, we sometimes forget that the brain is an organ and it's physical. And even if we can't see the physical damage, there is still physical damage to the brain. And often the way we see that is through behaviors and socialization. The alcohol also, because it impacts the organs, it can impact not only the organs, but anything that's developing at the time. So, you know, facial features, formation of limbs, those kinds of things, hands, and again, the impact that comes from the brain being affected. And I just wanted to say here that there's a very short window of opportunity for the alcohol to cause physical, visible damage. I did send an attachment. It's called the visible kid with the invisible disability or something like that, that I think really does a good job, and I probably didn't get it to Joel in time, but of explaining the impact not only of dealing with a brain that's been affected by alcohol, but dealing with the impact of having a hidden disability. When we see people who look like they have a disability, we tend to be open to making accommodations, and we tend to recognize that they have a disability. But often, because the window of opportunity for the development of facial features, which is very often what we see as the visible marker, is so small, many people do not have the visible features. And so, because of the way alcohol impacts the brain, it may not affect intellectual development. So we see somebody who's smart, very verbal, and not very successful. And we don't tend to think brain, we tend to think behavior. And what we need to remember is that behavior comes from the brain. Social skills come from the brain. So if the brain's impacted, I always say, take it back to the brain. Take it back to the brain, because that's where it comes from. And if we, I'll come back to this, it's a recurring theme, but if we only look at the behavior, we're missing a lot of where that's coming from. Okay, and go ahead to the next slide, please. Okay. FASD is lifelong. It does not go away. A lot of my experience has come in advocating for some of my own children who were exposed, and you know, I remember in middle school where she was doing very well in the end of elementary, and so I was saying, middle school, we need to put these things in place, and the argument I was getting was, well, let's see how she does. And waiting and seeing is waiting for people to fail. And we shouldn't do that, because the reality is that it does not go away. And when you step into a new environment, or you step into a new grade, or you have a new schedule, or you have new workers, or you have a new program, those are all transitions, and they all require foreplanning and really building success from the get-go, not waiting for to see if it works, but having a plan in place so that you can structure success for these youth. And the reason we do it is because it works, because people can be very successful. People are able to have the accommodations they need, just as if somebody who is not able to use their legs has the accommodation of using a wheelchair to get around. Same function, they're able to be mobile. They just do it a different way. So for some youth, they just need a different way to be successful. And it's a team effort, but one of the big things I think that is so important with youth as well is to teach them to self-advocate. And that's something that I think after-school programs really have an opportunity to do by giving them successes and enabling them to take that success and to share that success with others. That's huge, I think. And it doesn't always happen at school. So I think the after-school programs have such an important role, especially for those youth who may not be being successful during the school day. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. So I kind of went back and forth from doing my slides as a youth and as a presenter, but I think it's really important to think about when the youth get to your after-school program. A lot of youth are tired for a lot of different reasons. Kids with prenatal exposure may be absolutely exhausted. And I think it's important to be aware of that. We may be ready. We've been waiting all day for them to get there, and we want them to jump in and go for it. And they may not be ready to. They may be literally just tired. School can be fun, but very often for our youth, just maintaining during the school day is exhausting. They may be frustrated from not having successes during the school day, or from having to work harder than most other youth to have successes. And they may be very, very lonely. Friendship is one of the things that is hard, especially as youth get older. And again, it's another way that I think, after-school programs can do so much in building those social skills and giving youth an opportunity outside of the school day and the school setting to have those. Next slide, please. Okay. Kids who go through the day, I had 6 kids. I can tell you, I wasn't always the most positive person by the time they got out the door in the morning. But for youth who are struggling, very often they're getting more frustrated. Caretakers may be more frustrated. And it may happen at home, it may happen at school, and then they come to you, and then they may not be feeling really good about themselves. So I think I put this slide in here because I think we really need to notice this component, this side of the youth we're working with. They are worthy. They're kind, caring. They try hard and want to succeed. And we don't always see that. That may not be the side of them we're seeing, but I think it's really important to remember, because if we don't remember it, we're not going to be able to remind them of their positive qualities. And that's so important because, again, they may be, by that time of the day, not feeling too good about themselves. And if they've had successes, then we need to show them those successes and say, see, yes, you can. All right, next slide. All right, whoops, there we go. Okay, I think this is really important in a youth program after school, to make all youth feel welcome, that they belong here. And, you know, the second one, do you like me? I know that with my daughter, she could size people up really quickly. And if she didn't think you liked her, it was not going to be a very good relationship. And relationship for these youth are extremely important. And respect. We talk a lot about respect, and we want kids to be respectful, but sometimes they're not the recipients of respect. And it's hard to expect them to treat others with respect if they're not feeling respected. And I kind of read through these slides, and I was thinking it's kind of like lecturing, but I've seen it from both perspectives, you know, as an educator in the classroom, as a youth mentor, and through the eyes of my children who maybe haven't experienced these things or have gotten, you know, kicked out of programs because of issues related to prenatal exposure. So being aware that when they come to you, they've, again, already been home and they've already been to school, and how was that for them? One of the things, I think every kid needs a champion. And you may very well be the champion for a particular youth. Everybody needs to have somebody who believes in them and believes they can do it. That's extremely important. Somebody who's going to stand by them through thick and thin and say, yep, that was not good, but you know what, we're going to move on. And we need you here. Next slide. I think can I go back to the other slide? I just wanted to say an experience I had in an after-school program where several of the kids were in the same classroom, and we literally took the first half hour of our meeting was spent debriefing, because there was no way that we could have done anything else during that time. So just being kind of tuning into that, you know, how was your day? And especially, you know, being there to kind of be the listening person that can, you know, allow them to debrief and allow them to, you know, talk about what happened and try to maybe help them problem solve or something like that. A lot of times there's not that opportunity, but it can make a big difference. Okay, next slide. All right, this is, I'm not sure how the discipline works for after-school programs. I know that in schools, a lot of times we don't, as I said, look back behind the brain. And so I think it's very, very important that not everybody's brain works the same, and that FAIR is not the same. So just to take a really basic example, sitting in group. That's fine for kids who can sit in the group, but for some kids, if they're not moving, they can't focus their brain. Or they've been sitting all day, and that takes, for many youth, too much energy away from their overall store of energy, and they're exhausted. So maybe in that situation, we know that so-and-so has to walk around. That's fine, so long as they're being respectful and whatever. But it's not, it doesn't have to be the same. It has to provide an equal chance of success. I use the example of glasses. Not everybody wears glasses, but nobody gives people who wear glasses, there may be some teasing, but nobody says you can't wear glasses because so-and-so doesn't wear glasses. And nobody says we all have to wear glasses because so-and-so wears glasses. You know, in my mind, it helps me see that's kind of ridiculous. Well, it is also ridiculous when we don't provide accommodations because it's not the same. All right. Next. Hey, routines, I talk about being flexibly consistent and consistently flexible. It's very important to have routines, parameters. For youth whose brains have a hard time organizing themselves, organizing their day, organizing their body, organizing their supplies, it helps to have those parameters within which they can function because it provides some security. It reduces anxiety and it helps them know where the goalposts are. Every day is a new day. That goes for everyone. When we bring up what happened yesterday and we have, you know, things that carry over, we start kids at a disadvantage. So everybody gets a restart, whether it's the adult, the youth, whatever. And because there are going to be routines are there, but sometimes we need to modify them. Functioning can vary on a day-to-day. I had a rough day at school, just can't do it. Or I had a great day at school, I'm ready to go. And that's true of all kids, but for kids with prenatal exposure, it's more important. And also, kids will self-sabotage if they know that they're on the verge of getting kicked out or eliminated or removed or something like that. It's too much anxiety to worry about. Sometimes it's easier just to say, okay, fine, I'll blow it and then I'll be done. So watch for that. Okay, next. Okay, this is something I feel very strongly about. In our youth group, we've had people come up and say, so-and-so shouldn't be in there because they're bullying. And I say, that's exactly why they need to be in there, because we talk about being positive all the time. If we exclude them, then their influences are not the positive ones that we want. So everybody benefits by including people. Youth who don't have disabilities are going to be coming into contact with people with challenging behaviors or attitudes or whatever. What we can do for society is to teach the value of every person and show them, model how we include people and how we can help each other be successful. Next. Okay, this is really important, I think. I'll give you an example. I had a daughter who in kindergarten would run, and the teacher would say, don't run, don't run. And all she heard was, run, run. So say what you want, not what you don't want. So if you want people to walk, say walk. If you want people to whisper, say whisper. You know, whatever it is, just focus on the positive because that's what you want the youth to focus on. And sometimes you need to minimize words. If a youth is upset, talking louder, using more words, and getting closer is usually, for some youth, not a good strategy. For some youth, you need to back off, you know, try to de-escalate and use fewer words. Very simple instructions, very low tone, very, and it's hard, especially if you're in a situation where things might escalate. But if you're working with the youth, and there are many youth with prenatal exposure who do have poor coping skills, so they're not dealing with in social interactions maybe very positively, or not able to follow directions, so they're frustrated, and there's a saying, it's better to look bad than stupid. And if kids are not being successful in following through and doing what they need to do, very often they'll go the other direction, because then it's not like they can't do it, it's like they won't do it. But the reality is very often they can't do it. So it's up to us to figure out what's not working and how can we make it work. And very often the youth, given the opportunity, can help with that. So safety first, definitely, but if we look at how we're interacting with those youth, and the safety also is, does the youth feel safe there? Do they feel like their needs are going to be met, so that they don't have to worry and be on guard and be anxious about what's going to happen? Talking with the youth, very often it's that start of self-advocacy, which is so important for them, that I can say what I need and it will be respected. Okay. Next. Next slide. Okay. This is really very important. I have several slides on it. I don't know that I'll get to all of them, but we really need to think chronological age versus developmental age. We talk about dysmaturity, which means you might have a 16-year-old who is, at the 20-year-old level playing basketball, maybe at the 10-year-old level in reading, maybe at socially at the fourth, very young level. We need to think about that when we're working with youth, that we have to think younger but still be respectful. So when we think about youth, we tend to think they should act their age. Well, a lot of times they are acting their age, but what they're acting is their developmental age, not their chronological age. And for those youth, there's a lot of discordance, because, like I said, they might be in one area, they're way up here. Socially, very often they're down low. Verbally, they can be off the charts, but their comprehension can be low. So they're dealing with all this inside their own world, and knowing that and being mindful of where they're actually functioning at helps us build opportunities for them to be successful. This is really a stressful issue, and it's harder as youth get older, because socially it gets more and more challenging to be able to interact with other youth at their chronological age, because developmentally in some areas they're not there. And that's where our youth become so at risk often, because they want to have friends so badly. So building safe, healthy relationships is very important for them. Okay, next slide. This is a chart. This is actually out of FASD into Action, which I highly recommend. I'm a trainer. Tammy Eller in Anchorage is a trainer. Jen Wagaman in Fairbanks is a trainer. But this, I'm not going to go through it all, but it breaks down how you can look at specific behaviors dependent on, what the expectation is. If the expectation is they will sit for 30 minutes and work on a project, okay, what does the brain have to do that? Well, there's a lot of things that the brain has to do, and they have to be able to quiet the need to move. They have to be able to filter out sounds. They have to be able to follow steps. And then we look at how does this individual's brain work. There's a whole assessment that goes on before this. So on the next slide, I kind of made it easier. Oh my goodness, we were practicing with the pens the other day. I guess it stayed on there. So thinking about what's the task you're looking for a youth to do. Is it chronologically appropriate? Probably. Is it developmentally appropriate? Maybe, maybe not. So that's something. I just put a few things on here, and I want to talk about homework really quickly because it's, I know the Boys and Girls Club has homework club. I don't know about other clubs. But I think this is where you can really be advocates for kids. I'm a former teacher. I gave homework to my kindergartners, but it was appropriate homework. And I think we need to look at how much time it takes for homework completion out of the time that the youth has to spend totally with, whether in an after-school program or with their families, and look at the impact that the homework's having on the individual. Is it being helpful? Are they learning from it? Or is it torture? And I say youth groups, you know, can advocate because if the kids are doing homework there, then maybe you can communicate the pluses and minuses with the families and with the school. I don't know how much communication you have, but I think that's a really big issue, especially for youth who struggle with after school. I know I have one daughter who would come home from school and sleep. And when she had a good situation in school where she had an aide and they said she's working so hard now, she's doing great, and I said she was really working hard before, much harder.
Hi everyone, this is Alex from Stone Soup Group. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our organization if you're not familiar with us. We support families caring for children with special needs. We are a statewide organization. We have regional parent navigators in communities throughout Alaska. And I think what is most important for you to know about us is we are a resource. So we are a resource to you as professionals, and then we're also a resource for families. And in a little bit, you'll get a chance to see our website, and I'll point out some key things so that you can connect to us and even refer families to us. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amy so she can talk a little bit about putting what we've just learned into practice, and she also has some really awesome tools that you may choose to use.
Yeah, so I think Veronica, this is Amy, West Stone Soup Group. Veronica was asking about tools and sharing, and at the end there will be all the tools we're talking about, the documents and our presentation. And you can let any of the three of us know if you want some specific pieces, especially for those teachers, Veronica. So first we wanted to do, what we're going to do is kind of add on to what Jean said. Jean did a great overview of what, sorry, that's my alarm telling me to be here. So what FASD is, we're going to talk about some of those strategies and really responding to some of those behaviors versus the diagnosis. The first thing we want to do is get everybody a little bit involved. So if you're at your computer and you have the screen in front of you, we're going to bring up a poll and kind of get everybody involved, wake you up a little bit. So if you could look at this poll and answer these questions, and you can answer multiple of them, but we want to talk about what does consistency look like in your program, be it a summer program, before, after school program. What does that look like? And if it's other, you can put that in the chat box as well, if something else that you look as consistent. And as you're answering that, I just want to talk about why it's important to break it down like this, because people are like, well, you know, that child just needs consistency. That individual just needs, you know, to look forward to something. They need to know what's happening. And you're like, well, I have consistency. You know, every day we have snack. Well, that's great. well, if you have snack at 3:20 versus 3:40 versus 4:30, that's not consistency, even though it's happening the same day. So what is that piece of the consistency that they need to help them be more successful? Okay, so I see that same staff, that's awesome, because there's usually a lot of overturn, so 75% is a really great number. Same schedule or similar schedule, that's awesome as well. And that's where I kind of wanted to point out that a really great tip when I was a Head Start teacher is the same schedule. It doesn't mean you have to do blocks or you have to do reading or something at the same time every day. What you have to do is let them know that there's a schedule, that every day there's going to be this gross motor or large activity where it's like a noisy activity. Every day at this time it's going to be a quiet activity. That type of consistency with your schedule is sometimes more useful because then they know to ask for specifics, but then at least they have that basic flow down. So there's that. Thank you for sharing. Sorry, I was trying to read some of the chats. I'm not going to do that right now because then I'll get all distracted, right? So like I said before, we wanted to talk about some of those behaviors of an individual that experiences an FASD, and it's really about what is it that they're presenting with? What are you seeing? Is it that they're not able to pay attention? Is it that they want to run around in circles, especially right when they show up to your program because they just need to get the energy out? Is it that they always want to touch somebody next to them, right? So what is it those behaviors look like? So again, not looking at what that diagnosis is, because as we all know, working with youth that are typical have some of these behaviors as well when they get stressed or when things happen, right? And that is something good to note, is that these adaptations that you're making can work for everybody. It can work for individuals with autism, individuals with FASD, and typical youth, which is great, right? So I wanted to talk about some adaptations real quick regarding, so we talked about consistency and schedules, but quiet space, giving them that space. And Jean was talking about that, how they can be really overwhelmed because they've been trying so hard all day long and putting so much energy into that. Once they get to your space, maybe after school, or if you're even a summer program, then they're just like, oh, it's a free-for-all, right? They kind of need that space to go to. So a lot of these programs after school, you're just in a gym or a cafeteria, right? And so there's no quiet space to go to. But I've seen YMCAs and other programs, they just put 2 pillows and a basket of books and even some headphones in the corner. And that's okay. That's somewhere they know that they can go to and just kind of have that space. And the next question is, well, what if they're there all day? We don't want them there the whole evening or the whole afternoon. How do they know that they're quote unquote done being there? And something that I've used in the past is like a feeling wheel. So when they get there, they know that on that feeling wheel they're mad and they can mark that. But when they've calmed down, and this is where you use those tools to teach them, feel your heart, it's racing, you're really upset right now, and that's okay. When it slows down is when, you can come join us and we'll be over here type thing. And just kind of remind them, again, teaching them to use those tools themselves and identify where they're at within their own bodies, because that's what they're trying to learn. Sorry. So we wanted to talk about some resources. We really, I don't want to go too much in depth with these, but I really do want to show you some of them just because they're really cool that we found. The first one, and this might be interesting for those that are also school educators as well as parents and providers, the CDC information for educators, and we'll have this at the end as well as a document, but it's good to look at that CDC website. So we're going to share this real quick. Is it sharing?
Yep.
Okay. There it is. Good deal. And so there's information all over this website, but there's this one document that we'll share at the end that kind of explains FASDs and what that looks like for educators and how it might affect the classroom. There's just some really great links here, some videos that model what it looks like to work with an individual with an FASD or some of those behaviors. Okay, and the next tool that I have marked due to learn classroom management. What I really want to point out on here, I'm not sure, can we make it any bigger? Is so after, like if you see behavior there on your screen and how the behavior is limited, there we go. So let's go to like, I just want to look here where it says cannot sit still. At the end there, that blue word strategy is another link, and it gives you some like 2 or 3 strategies on what you can do in your classroom to help them learn to be able to sit in that circle time, to help them learn to basically care for others and have that empathy and what that looks like, and learn what their feelings are so they learn what others' feelings are. And I really like that not only are they defining what that behavior is, because that's what we're looking for, right? We're just like, okay, this kid can't sit still, keeps, you know, running around in circles, can't do anything for more than 2 seconds. What do I do? And then what is the strategy? You know, it's not just defining what the behavior is, but it's giving us some help too. The next link was due to learn teacher toolbox. And this one I really like because, again, it gives those visual strategies, and it kind of combines that idea of teaching them how to visually see something as they learn, which really works for individuals with an FASD, that seeing something and doing it at the same time, but also it leads you through some of those samples of schedules, which is really nice too, and what that might look for if you need a visual schedule. And like Jean was talking about, the chronological versus developmental age, that's something to take into account. Yeah, they might be, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, so they should have this reading level and be able to do that, but are they able to process those words? They're able to process, as humans, we're able to process pictures a lot quicker than we are words. And so that helps them get it quicker if that's what the understanding that you want them to have. On this page also, on the left, let me just say real quick, are a bunch of links, and I really like the links over there, like behavior in the classroom, determining support needs. They have charts like Jean was just showing us, those assessments and what the triggers are, and kind of looking through a functional behavior now assessment. So you can use some of those or share that with the team for the school, just to kind of say, hey, I'm going to take some notes and for a few days and see what's going on, and then maybe share this with the parents. And you know, this is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing at home? Do you have any ideas about this? What have you done so that you're not seeing those behaviors at home? It's great to have that discussion as well. So the next one is specifically about those FASD strategies. So again, really, really specific reminders. And I know it's hard to count down to the bullets, but for some reason I really like bullets 10 through 14 because it talks about breaking it into smaller steps, being as concrete as possible. Sometimes it's lost on our individuals with an FASD, the humor that we have, or we say, you know, oh, stop, you know, what did our parents used to say? You know, just go away, go play in the street somewhere, right? If you say that to an individual with an FASD, that is literally what they're going to do. So we really have to watch our words and what we're going to be doing. And it's something we do kind of offhand and don't think about it all the time, but we have to keep that in mind when we're working with them. And then of course, as another resource is Stone Soup Group. You can always email or call us and say, hey, I have this scenario with this family and, you know, I'm just not sure what I should do. Do you have any ideas? Or can you help us talk through this as a team? And you can definitely just let us know, because every scenario and every family is different, and the resource might not be available right there. So Alex is going to talk a little bit about this and kind of how to contact us.
Yeah, so I just want to point out there's a nice link right here to contact us. So if you wanted to speak to somebody here at Stone Soup Group directly, this would be the place to go. I also want to point out that we have a make a referral link here at the top. So if you were interested in connecting a family with us, this is where you would go. There's this form that you can download to make a referral. You'll collect some information about the parent and child. And then I also just want to point out at the very bottom of this form, there's a release of information that the parent would sign. And if you submit this form to us, we'll go ahead and reach out to the family. Going back to our website, I just also want to point out that we have trainings that are scheduled throughout the year for both professionals and families. So check out our training and events. So under registration here, I just wanted to point out that we do have a training, FASD 101. It is next week, next Thursday, September 7th, here in Anchorage. So we're going to be hosting that here. If you're interested, go to this page and sign up, please. And then the one other thing that I wanted to point out too is there is an FASD Awareness Day next Saturday.
Sure.
Yep, Saturday, September 9th, None for 9, and there's going to be an event. Here's a little bit more information about it on the 9th here in Anchorage at the library. So if you're interested in joining and you're in town, please come out. Stone Soup Group will be there as well, and we'd love to see you.
And if you're not in Anchorage, FASD Awareness Day is an international day. And so you can look up anywhere in your community where you're at, and hopefully they have an event going on. If not, you can let one of us know, and there's a group of folks that like to get events going in communities when there's enough people to do that. And it's just a great way worldwide to come together in acknowledgement of this preventative diagnosis. So we're running a little short on time, but one more tool I wanted to just kind of do, if we could take the sharing screen off real quick, is on the next slide where it says My Child 101. That'll also be a document we have. And what this is a one-pager that a family can fill out to tell you more information about that child. Like I said, that communication is key, right? And obviously, if you've worked with children for a while and you meet a child in the first few minutes, you're like, oh, I'm going to need to know more about that kiddo. And you may not know a diagnosis, the parent may not know a diagnosis. You don't need to know that. All you need to know is that these are the behaviors the individual has, they present. This is what works, the strategies that work for the family, that work for the teacher, and this is what I need to do in my setting. And so it's really reacting to those behaviors and how that presents for them, because like I said, everybody is different and it affects their brain differently. So one more thing before we're done, we'll do another little poll. So you actually have to look at your screen and use your mouse again. And then we'll go into questions. I see a few questions there, so that's awesome. So if you could tell us, true or false, people with an FASD respond best to a combination of strong, clear consequences for unwanted behaviors, appropriate medications, and talk therapy. What do you think? Thank you, Amanda, for putting that information up there about what's happening in Fairbanks. Very cool. Good question, Amanda. Appropriate medications. So it could mean natural medications. It could be medications prescribed by a doctor as well. So when I first read this question, I got it wrong because it's kind of misleading. You're like, well, yeah, that sounds like a great wraparound support tool, right? Those three things together would work really well for an individual. So we've got 26 days. So 76% say true. Let's go ahead and take away that poll real quick. I'll go to the next slide, next few slides. And it's actually false. And again, on the second paragraph, it talks about why. Many people with an FASD have difficulties with abstract thinking, memory, and executive functioning, so that cause effect is difficult. At one time, they may be able to follow that rule and get that down, but in the long run, it's something hard for them to remember and to put into another setting. And so that's really difficult for them when you're doing consequences based on something, because typically something happens and then you move their setting and react to it by giving them that consequence, right? That's not going to make sense to them and how their brain is working or making those connections. It takes longer and more work for them to. So that's something to remember. Sorry. So at the end, we've got our regional navigators. It shows where they are: Bethel, Fairbanks, Kenai, Prince of Wales. And you can click on that and find their information. Also on our website is all our navigators and how you can contact us. Okay, so I think we're going to lead to questions, and I think maybe they're going to lead us through those questions, unless you want me to start answering them. Great. Anita, do you mind if I answer some of those questions? Is that okay? Okay, so can we share these presentations with others? Definitely, and if you need that information, definitely. Are we available for those outside of Anchorage? Again, we are statewide. If we don't have a regional navigator in your area, our navigators travel for other clinical needs, and so we'll touch base in those areas, but also we can do things by distance, be on Skype or by phone for any meetings or information. And then are any of our trainings online for those of you? Yes. So the FASD one, because it's more interactive and it's a longer one, is why it's in person. But typically our trainings are by webinar, by distance, they're call-in available, and it always says that where it is on our website, Shauna, so you can look at that. And if you want one in your area, let us know, and we'll let you know when we're coming to that area. I'm not sure if Jean wants to talk about Kurt's question or if you want me to. Either one of us can. I think I spoke to this a little bit. Would there be harm in giving all children or youth these considerations? No, definitely not. Like I was saying, you know, the adaptations we make for an individual with a challenge in our classroom or in our setting can work for children of all ranges, developmental ranges that are typical or not typical, or other diagnosis, right? If you're making adaptation, it's probably because there's a need in that setting period. So I think it would work for everybody. Yeah. Can you describe the resources available on the screen? Definitely. So Stone Soup's resources, anyways, are the FASD 101 07 September. Marked that. That's for the event that's happening on that date. My Child 101, it's that one pager that we had talked about to fill out for families, and just share that information. It starts that conversation back and forth. I know as teachers and being in the classroom or being in a child care setting, we're not in the business of diagnosing, right? But we also know that we need to meet these needs, so that My Child 101 starts that conversation. Our program summary is just more information about Stone Soup Group and what we do. And then our PowerPoint is there as well. We have our FASD.
I'm sure I didn't get that right, but anyway. And it's going to be on Saturday the 9th. I've attached the registration form, which includes a scholarship application. Our priority is families in our region and providers, because we serve my program, which is actually, which I didn't say, I actually work for Manilic, and I'm the Traumatic and Acquired Brain Injury Coordinator or program, because I'm the only one. So we serve, my program serves Norton Sound and Northwest Arctic. And so those are our priorities, but we do have some funds for scholarships, and we are providing food. So it's going to be one day, but I think it's a really good start for our region. And in the springtime, just to throw it out, we will be having a traumatic and acquired brain injury. Our conference was postponed till springtime. Let's see what else we have here. And also, since I live in Kiana, I'm used to working with remote villages, and I've educated all my kids in Kiana. So, especially in terms of school issues, you know, if people have questions, I do have a Facebook page, and you can shoot questions there, or, you know, I've done a lot of advocating in schools as the Stone Soup Group, but done a lot of distance delivery. So that answers Shauna's question. Are any of the trainings online for those outside of Anchorage? I'm not sure if that was specific to Stone Soup or not. And
so I think we went through all the questions. In case anybody has any more, resource baskets, all back to you, and people can just contact us separately if you want to.
Perfect. So thank you again for everyone for joining us today, as well as our presenters for sharing their knowledge. Contact information is, I believe, on the slide, but if there are any questions, please feel free to contact us at the Resource Basket. So on behalf of the Resource Basket, thank you again for being with us, and hope you have